Alright guys, we're going to go ahead and start with our first screencast of our first online lecture here. In this one we're going to look at the social and cultural changes that occurred in the United States in the late 1800s and also the quick rise and quick fall of the Populist Party. Alright, here we go. So in the late 1800s, a lot of historians look back at this time and call it the Gilded Age. And for you guys that don't know where this term gilded, where it comes from, basically what it means is something that's very shiny and golden on the outside and looks beautiful. However, when you look in deeper, the material on the inside is much cheaper. And most of the historians look back at this time and talk about this because on the outside you look at the United States and how it was developing during the industrial age, and the new inventions led to huge industrial growth. Cities were expanding, large workforce, many people working, huge skyscrapers were being built, the cities were expanding like crazy. You had wealthy entrepreneurs like Rockefeller and Carnegie building huge mansions. And on the outside, society looked good. Immigrants were looking at this, trying to come over. However, when people started to look a little bit deeper into these things, they started to see a society that was really filled with a lot of crime, poverty, and just the ever-expanding large gap between the rich and the poor, where you had some immigrants, some that were wealthy, had great lives, great jobs, all those, but the majority were living in crowded tenements, having trouble finding jobs, not being paid, not their working conditions. Everything was pretty bad at this time. So this really started to spur on some different thoughts and feelings going forward. Major first thing we're going to look at is two philosophies that were going on during this time. One of social gospel and the other one of social Darwinism. Hopefully for some of you guys with science, Darwinism, the term means something to you, but we'll first look at social gospel. And like the sound, or like the name kind of looks like it says, really what this was it taught, look to Jesus to apply to society and how things were run, meaning they were trying to get the corruption out. Look back to, religious teachings, the Bible, those things, to get society back to where a lot of people thought it should be. It really focused on the reconstruction of American society. Too many people thought that it had kind of gone downhill. People led to corruption of many different industries, from politicians to entrepreneurs to the railroads. All these things felt that there was just way too much issues in society, and there needed to be some reform, and there needed to be some change. And one of the big reforms they were looking for is labor reform. As we had talked about in class, there were no labor laws really. We look at today with unions, those things, none of those were around. And we even kind of talked about in class, even when workers try to do these, they were quickly squashed down by the employers who just basically fired people for trying to get any kind of better working hours. I mean, no child labor laws, any of those things. So really the social gospel looked to try to change society and help it out through the teachings of religion. However, on the other side, you had social Darwinism. And hopefully some of you guys know Darwinism, what that is. Basically, survival of the fittest. And they applied it to the economic nature of society during this time as well, with the survival of the fittest, basically saying, the best would survive, meaning the best entrepreneurs. You had a good business, you had a good job. You would survive, you would expand, you would do great things, and the people that didn't would be poor and would struggle. Okay, and they felt it was social Darwinism. It wasn't their job. It wasn't the government's job. It wasn't anybody's job to help them. So obviously they believed in more of a laissez-faire type of policy with regards to economics, and the government should stay out. You look at today, obviously none of that's true. We have a lot of reforms where government needs to get involved to help those who are struggling, whether it's welfare or unemployment or any of those different types of things. But at this time, those believed in social Darwinism, like the big-time entrepreneurs of Carnegie, Rockefeller, believed, if they had a business and they could afford to take out any competition and do anything, they could. And that's what they believed during this time. So this was kind of the conflict that started really leading us into a lot of society because they were struggling. They wanted some reforms. Okay, and we'll continue to look more at that. Now we're briefly going to talk and discuss about the Populist Party. Okay, the Populist Party kind of rose quickly and fell even more quickly. What the Populist Party was, it was a movement to increase the farmers' political party. Okay, farmers were struggling during this time, and obviously farming industry was a huge industry during this time. So the farmers formed a new party in 1892 called this Populist Party. It was a third party to the Democrats and Republicans that we even know today. So this was really one of the first times a third independent party had formed. Now we have these other parties similar to this that form up every once in a while, but this is one of the first ones that tried to go up against these two because they felt neither of these parties were giving them as farmers what they were looking for. And obviously they opposed the large corporations and the Gilded Age policies that were put in place because those were helping those entrepreneurs, helping the big businesses, but were not helping these farmers. You can see, the Standard Oil monopoly, these things were all going on. These were all things the farmers were trying to find a voice in to go up against and try to get their own voices heard. They felt the government should own railroad, telephone, telegraph systems, all these different type of industries, really because they were looking out for the people, they believed. They thought there was too much corruption going on with these businesses, with monopolies, obviously, like we've talked about in class. You had the robber barons of the railroad industry getting land grants and all those things and trying to sell them. So they felt if the government was involved taking care of these different types of things, the people would be better protected. Okay? And they wanted unlimited silver coinage. At this time, there was some major issues with regards to how the money was being backed. A lot of people thought we kind of did with gold, then it was based on paper. They felt, unlimited coinage of silver coinage would help solve the problem of our economic issues. It would cause inflation, and it would really start to get the money back into society, and that's what they were looking for. Some other issues they were looking for was, an 8-hour workday. They were looking for some labor reform. So Populist Party was one of the first ones really to look for this. They were looking for different taxing issues, restriction of immigration. They were looking for a lot of these different policies that eventually do come in place. So that's why the Popular Party, even though, as we'll look in just a second, didn't last very long, a lot of their ideas, what they were looking for with tax reforms, with silver coinage, those things, did make an impact throughout society. However, with these things, the plan didn't work. Okay, the Republican nominee McKinley wins the election easily, and because of this, the Populist Party soon collapses. Like a lot of parties, they focused too much on the farmers, and they lost the votes of the urban workers. Okay, those people living in the cities, those things, they didn't feel like this party represented them, so they didn't get the vote. And you got to remember, during this time, that was a major portion of urban workers, people working and dealing with that. So they lost that, and eventually the attempt to unite the urban workers and farmers had failed, and just as quickly this Populist Party kind of formed, looking out for a third party, looking out for the farmers, it collapsed almost just as easily. But it was one of the forerunners, and that's why they're important to these early reforms that you'll see in our next time we kind of talk about these things that really come about during this time, and will start to lead the country kind of starting to think about reforms to labor laws, unions, and all those different types of things. Okay, so with this, hopefully you got some notes out of it. You can pause, look back some things, but it's just kind of a brief intro into the start of reforms that are going to go on in the society. All right, thanks. Bye.